they're the gossip mongers in the global village. And what's going on? I gave a talk in Phoenix a little while ago, and the um, uh, the theme of my presentation was that the third stage of the American Revolution is underway right now, because and Obama criminally went around the world telling the world that American exceptionalism meant that Americans were superior to everybody else. That wasn't what it's about at all. It's about the fact that the American political system is superior to everyone else's. And Rush Limbaugh says America's the last chance for free speech and freedom. No, he's wrong. It's the only hope. No other country in the world has free speech as its number one reason for existence. And of course, the founding fathers knew how critical that was because they gave you guns to defend yourself against your own government, against and who tried to block your free speech, which is going on now with political correctness. But the media have always been the voice for the power elite. And one of the things that I just got your picture came up. One of the things that hi, how are you? One of the things that I want to read you this poem from 1782. 1782. It's called Progress of Error. And it says, "How shall I speak of thee or thy power address, the God of our idolatry, the press? By thee religion, liberty, and laws exert their influence and advance their cause. By thee worse plagues than Pharaoh's land befell, diffused make earth the vestibule of hell. Thou fountain at which drink the good and wise, thou ever bubbling spring of endless lies. Like Eden's dead probationary tree, knowledge of good and evil is from thee." That's 1782. Trump could have written that yesterday. And he's talking about the press and its power. And of course, with the internet, and that is the first time in history that the ordinary citizen has more information than even a lot of governments had 30 years ago. And of course, that's bypassing the control of information. And that's why you've got a people's revolution going on. And of course, why Trump refuses to stop giving out Twitters, because he knows that the media can't block him on that. And so you've got the third phase of the American Revolution going on, which is access to information, which up to now has been controlled by the mainstream media. Yes. And it isn't just a change in orbit. The tilt of the Earth is constantly changing. The textbooks tell you it's 23 and a half degrees. It isn't. It's close to 23 and a half degrees. And I always joking say it's close enough for government work. But the tilt of the Earth constantly changes from 21.8 to 24.4. It's constantly moving back and forth. And that change in tilt, of course, changes where the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle, the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn are, changes the whole climate of the Earth, and that tilt change alone equals more than human CO2. So you put the orbit with that and the change in tilt, both of them individually equal any change that human CO2 can create. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. Right. Here's the phrase you want to look for: the Milankovitch effect. MIL. Okay. Ilankovitch. Milankovitch. He was a Yugoslavian mathematician who realized that the changes in orbit and change in tilt, and also something called the precession of the equinox, um, if you calculate the changes to the climate that they create, that explains most of the long-term temperature variation on Earth. And he did this in the 1930s. So we've known about the Milankovitch effect, and we've known about the orbital change, as I said, for 150 years. So look up the Milankovitch effect. and you'll see the whole combination of the variation due to orbital change, the variation due to tilt change, the variation due to precession of the equinox, and then the net effect of those, and that gives you the global temperature. Well, first of all, as you know, we're in the postmodern age where facts are not relevant. Ocasio-Cortez said that the other day. Don't, you know, it's how you feel about something. And the other thing is that this became an environmental issue. And so if you dare to question anything, oh, you don't care about the planet, you don't care about the future, you don't care about the children. They laid the moral guilt on you. They took the moral high ground. And so, of course, when somebody like me comes along and says, well, hang on, oh, he's one of those global warming skeptics. Well, the truth is, all scientists are skeptics. If you're not a skeptic, you're not a scientist. And then in 2004, when they stopped calling it global warming, and therefore they stopped calling us global warming skeptics, it became climate change, and we became climate change deniers with all of the Holocaust connotations of that. Politicians will tell me, and I've spoken to hundreds of them, appeared before the Australian Senate a year ago, and they will say, yeah, well, we agree with you, but it's our political careers to even dare to appear to be not green enough. That's still a bullying tactic that guys like Al Gore can use, and politicians are afraid to say anything. And the you mentioned the energy companies, the oil companies. I went around to headquarters of oil companies back in the 1970s and 80s, late 70s and 80s, and said, look, they're going to destroy you people with the CO2 issue. They're going to say that the byproduct of your burning your product is causing global warming. The Chicken Little, the sky is falling. And they all nodded and smiled and said, yeah, we know the science of it. And then they did nothing except they all went out and funded Greenpeace and Sierra Club. Why? Because they could give them $10 million a year. It was perfect PR. Oh yeah, look at them now. Shell have just come out and said we're promoting a carbon tax. And why did the oil companies do it? It was cheap PR. They could give Greenpeace $10 million and say, look, see, we care about the world. Meantime, it's a tax deductible expense. And not only that, but if it costs them more than 10 million, they simply raise the price of gasoline by 1 or 2 cents. So they pass that on to the consumer. So that's the reason that these people are not acting. It's got nothing to do with the truth anymore. It's all about political position, what political persuasion, what power your data has, and how you can use it. And one of the things I've argued for a long time, almost jokingly, is they get you the politicians and the environmentalists get you shaking so hard that the money flies out of your pockets and they both go around picking it up. Yep, exactly what they did. Well, I agree with you, and but remember the Yiddish proverb that says the truth never dies, but lives a wretched life, and that's I've taken exactly that position. I used to I get media people saying to me, well, you know what you're saying gives comfort to the polluters. And that bothered me for a while. Then I finally realized, hey, if we allow the lies to go on, when the truth comes out, the people will say we don't believe anything you tell us. Then real issues won't get dealt with, like the noise pollution thing I mentioned to you earlier. And yeah, that's what you got to do is keep telling the truth, and you live or die with the truth. And one of the things with that, by the way, is also you've got to keep an open mind. I've got to keep right in my frontal lobotomy here the point that if somebody comes along and shows me evidence, real evidence, that I'm wrong, I've got to be the first one to be out there saying, hey, yeah, I got it wrong. Because otherwise, I'm as guilty of tunnel vision as the people that I'm attacking. Well, the what they can do is go to my website, DRTIM Ball, Dr. Tim Ball, that's all lowercase DRTIMBAL.com. And they'll find on there, they can purchase a little book that I produced, which will give them a very good overview of what we've talked about. Is the book here, and it's on the website. And then there are two donate buttons. One is for my legal fund, and one is for my own fund, because my wife and I spent all of our savings before we discovered that other people would help us to pay our legal bills. We're not complaining. We knew what we were doing, and we live comfortably on pensions that we planned for. But there are two donate buttons on the website. Uh, Thank you, and thanks for this opportunity. And I'm happy to talk to you anytime and answer any questions you have about any of it. Well, I can direct you to. I'll get some names for you, but the two that I worked with, particularly Borisenkov, they've passed away now. Because this is one of my issues. I'm 80 years old now, so I'm getting pretty long in the tooth. And that's another important point, by the way, is that traditionally in universities, the old professors had the prevailing wisdom. The young professors come in and challenged it. Now it's exactly the opposite. The young professors are coming in totally indoctrinated in the school system, and the old professors are saying, "Hold on a minute." So you look at the age of the climate change deniers, like Fred Singer, who's 92, myself, 80 years old. We're all long in the tooth, and that's another important point about what's going on here. Yeah. Well, yeah, and Al Gore said it. He said there'd be no ice in the Arctic 10 years from now, but that was 20 years ago. No, the one of the good pieces of news is that we now, for crop, for example, crop adaptation with plant breeding, it took 18, 20 years to get a new crop in the field. That's genetic modification in a very slow form, like doing surgery with a chainsaw. But now with genetic modification, we can get new crops in 18 months. So our abilities to adapt, it's just like the 88 89 drought in the US was worse than the 1936 drought, but because we'd improved technologies and everything else, we were able to cope with it much better. And so the fact that it was meteorologically worse was not the issue anymore. So that's what will happen with the fact that we're cooling when they're preparing for warming. Yep. Yeah, we one of the things we started doing, and I was part of this, we stopped doing summer fallow. That is taking all of the grass off the fields and keeping it brown all summer. We stopped doing that because that was what created the erosion. And we started a process called zero till. So you simply take off the old crop and then you inject the new crop directly, drill seeding it's called, directly into that vegetation. But that means that the snow stays on in the winter and the soil doesn't erode. That's been a huge change in the last 30 years, and the people in the city don't even know that's going on. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.